Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. I warn you, today we start out with royal stuff, some of which might be new to you. I suspect some of which will, at least a little bit of it will be definitely new to you because it's not known generally. And then later on, I am going to address a really rather important issue that is a serious issue that affects our society. So, those of you who don't want anything too serious, please feel free to skip it. And those of you who want to hear what I have to say, and I am responding to innumerable requests to actually address the subject, enjoy the first bit. Let's have levity before gravitas, okay? Sarah Sherlock says, why can't the royal family be honest with us? Why are they letting Harry and Meghan trash the monarchy? It's putting the royal family to shame, but not dealing with the son and that hussy. I think you mean by not dealing with this son and that hussy. Thank you very much for that, Sarah Sherlock. It's, first of all, every family deserves to have some privacy and some dignity. And there is such a thing as loyalty to your family, even when you fall out with them and even when they betray you. I know a lot of people are hungering for Harry and Meghan to not only be put in their place, but be punished roundly and visibly. Put yourself in the shoes of the family. I mean, let me tell you, when family betrays you, it does not behoove you to get down in the gutter and pick up mud and throw it back to them if you can possibly avoid it. I speak from personal experience, not only with my own family as a result of the really vicious things that my mother did to me over the years, within the family context as well as within the more social context, but never in public. She had too much dignity. She was too well bred for that. Let's give credit where it's due. And my ex-husband and his brother, who traduced me and made money out of their betrayal in the gutter press. So I do know what I'm speaking about. And notwithstanding that fact, I have limited the extent of what I have revealed even about my mother. The royal family cannot do certain things that the public would like them to do, because to do so would make them undignified and make them sink to Harry and Meghan's level. Just because you're dealing with a traitor doesn't mean you have to practice acts of betrayal. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I mean, sorry if I'm sort of sounding a little bit old-fashioned. Sometimes old-fashioned virtues are the best. And the second thing is, Harry deserves to be put in his place. But the royal family needs to put him in his place in a way that doesn't destroy their credibility, that doesn't destroy their claims to being correctly behaved. Now, I do agree that there are things that Harry should have done to him that the royal family is not doing. And when we say the royal family, we really are speaking about the king, although William has some input into it. Really, he should be removed from that royal family website forthwith. They already on the website, I hasten to add, make the point that he does not represent the monarchy and he no longer functions officially as a part of the royal family. So when people say that the family has not disassociated itself from Harry in that regard, they certainly have. But the fact that he is still on the website, and worse, that they have links to Harry and Meghan's commercial enterprises, is totally, totally ridiculous and shows that some of the royal family's advisors are as out of touch as I had cause to tell the late Queen's Communications Secretary, I think is what it's called now. I think it's called Communications Secretary. Press Secretary it used to be. And I said to him, you're lucky you're not working for me, because if you were working for Castle Goring, you'd have been pitched out on your air ages ago. So I didn't care whether he liked it or not. The Maltese Penny says, it's looking like the King's man, Tobin Andre, along with the Sussy, I've never heard that one before, are behind the hate campaign being waged by the Daily Mail against the Wales family. It now looks like the King has prevented the Waleses from moving into Windsor Castle, even though the Queen earmarked it for William and wanted him to move there before he became king. Why wouldn't the King allow him to move in then? That is the question. He took Forest Lodge as the next most secure location. The King has got it in for William. Is it true Meghan is going bust? I'll answer the last bit first. Yeah, it's true. She and Harry are in serious financial problems. And her enterprise, what's it called, Was Never, is going to make her wish she had called it Was Never instead of As Ever. So I'll dispense with that right now because really we have more important things to address, bigger fish to fry, so to speak. The King doesn't have it in for William. I'm sorry. It's the press create these dynamics so that they can have content to push. Because remember, without stories to tell, they won't be making money. So they fabricate and fabulate when it suits them to do so. And they are trying to present and maybe hope even that it will result in a genuine estrangement between the King and William. It's utter rubbish. The campaign that the Daily Mail is waging against the Wales family is very simple. The Waleses are basically very dull, if the truth be known. They are very glamorous, they are very dutiful, they photograph well, but think about it. Look at what they do and how they do it. It's as I used to say to my dog, Pops Miranda, who was so perfectly behaved that you never ever had to ever reprimand her. I used to say, Pops Miranda, I would never talk to you if I had to only reprimand you. I had to make an effort to reward Pops Miranda for being good, while all the other dogs got rather more attention than she would naturally have got. because not only were they loving, etc., but they also had to be reprimanded and kept into line. William and Catherine are like Pops and Miranda. They basically are there and they are praiseworthy. And there's nothing else to say, really, if you think about it. So, the Daily Mail needs to create some dynamic where they will take this starry couple and run with them in an adversarial context, which creates the drama. Harry and Meghan, of course, provide drama, but everybody's getting fed up with Harry and Meghan's drama. So they need a new antagonist. And the new antagonist that they are creating is a war between the Waleses and the King and Queen. That's what that is all about, basically. Good luck to them. But they will run with this not only now, but into the future. Because I hate to say it, but an awful lot of the public are very gullible. Also, another reason why the Mail is creating this arena of antagonism is that they are hoping to settle their lawsuit with Harry. And they know that the soft underbelly is the king. William is inflexible. William is not going to be pandering to Harry or ever going to be making up with Harry. So they have a fertile field to plant all sorts of seed in about, oh, William should forgive Harry. Harry's really sorry. So sorry that he doesn't say sorry. But of course, that's their interpretation of sorry. And they, at the same time, are gaining brownie points with Harry and covertly trying to incentivize him to settle. There's all of that going on as well. Then there is something that Dan Wooten pointed out to me that I had actually not understood, which is the war between the Murdoch group and the Mail. Because the editor of The Sun is on very cordial terms with William and Catherine, while Tobin Andre was with the Mail. And even though the king is not instructing Tobin Andre to do the dirty, it suits the Mail to push this narrative that the king might be doing the dirty because on Harry and on William, because then that proves that Harry was right when he said the king used to betray his son's interests with the newspapers. Do you see? Wheels within wheels. Now, as for the fiction that the late Queen promised William that he could move into Windsor Castle, it's utter rubbish. The only occupant ever of Windsor Castle is the monarch. I happen to know that because an ancestor of mine created Windsor Castle. His name is William the Conqueror. And from then till now, which is nearly 1,200 years, 1,100 and something, Sorry, only the monarch is allowed to be the chief resident of Windsor Castle. Oh, you have priests and courtiers who are resident on site. I know some of them. So I have a good friend who used to be something at the castle, and I'm not going to say who it was or what it was. And I used to go and see him there, and he lived there. So, but for the royals, only the monarch lives there. Nobody else lives there. Harry and Meghan tried to muscle in with the late Queen and get rooms in the castle, and she turned it down cold and gave them Frogmore Cottage, but they were angling for Windsor Castle. She was not in a position, as the late monarch, to promise on behalf of the next monarch that she could violate her successors' rights to dictating who should abide by what customs and who shouldn't. She wasn't disrespectful, and it would have been the height of disrespect. So I hope that answers that question. Home with Emma, some of these names I just love, says, nothing personal, but Lady C, you have many American viewers who have absolutely no understanding of how our royal institution works, and then make harsh judgments about our beloved monarch. It is so insulting. Home with Emma, I don't actually think it's insulting. You know, you made the point. They're foreigners. They don't understand our system. Do we fully understand theirs? Very often not. I mean, I went to school partly in America. I lived in America on and off for 7 years. My sisters live in America. My nieces and nephew and great nieces and nephews all live in America. One of them is the heir to the first double presidential families in the United States of America. So I think I actually have some working knowledge. And even though I do, I would hardly have said that my level of expertise is up to that of, say, Professor Jeffrey Sachs or Professor John Merzheimer, or indeed Professor Jonathan Haslam here in the United Kingdom, all of whom I defer to for having superior knowledge to mine. But the point I'm making is we can't be insulted that people don't know what we know when we are speaking about ourselves, because do we know as much as they do about themselves? So I leave that with, and I don't get offended, I have to say, when people earnestly don't understand. And the purpose of this channel is also, or one of the purposes, aside from hopefully having fun and entertaining you and informing you on matters that you wish to be informed upon. One of the other, shall we say, raison d'etre would be that maybe one is actually providing information that will enlighten people in an entertaining way, so that they will have a greater understanding of the constraints upon which we as Britons and the British royal family will have to function, and therefore the disastrous effects that Harry and Meghan, who are really a great morality tale for any period in history. So, and this also helps to hopefully by addressing issues, it's not only enlightening in terms of our geopolitical issues, but also hopefully entertaining and at the same time addressing deeper moral and societal issues. So I hope that answers the question. And he says, poor little birdies. Meghan eats chicken. She does. She also roasts a mean chicken. Crocodile. Waffles. Yeah. I tell you, I know how to roast chicken. She also knows how to eat chicken. The hypocrisy, the virtue signaling, the pretentiousness. You can't shoot those little birdies, no. But you can slaughter the chickens. And let's not forget about the turkeys. I don't actually know, in fairness to her, how she can. Well, actually, I just realized what I was going to say. And in fact, Meghan doesn't really have respect for her family. And so it's perfectly understandable that she would, without batting an eyelid, slaughter a turkey because, and never consider the fact that they have legs that are very similar to hers and lead one to believe that maybe they are somehow linked familiarly. Says I, being naughty and mischievous. Sorry for being wicked. Lynn Lewis says, that stunt Henry pulled, having a friend drop off the wreath, is absolutely disgusting. And whoever did this deed should be ashamed of themselves. And I hope it's found out who did it. Just horrific. The last time Harry tried a stunt like this, the Queen, without batting an eyelid, in a matter of seconds, refused to allow him to have a wreath at the cenotaph on Remembrance Day. I was told this by somebody who is in a position to know exactly how long it took her to say no. And it took her as long to say no as it's taken me to just say the word no, like nanoseconds. This time he didn't ask for permission. This time he snuck it in. His private note to the veterans in honour of his grandfather. The grandfather whose last year of his life he helped to ruin by making it clear that the love his grandfather thought he had for him, Harry didn't have. And the distress that he caused Prince Philip and the Queen in the last year of Prince Philip's life and the last years of the Queen's life. The man is unconscionable, but then, Doria, bring me some weed. Weed will rot your brain. Weed will ruin your conscience. Weed will induce paranoia and schizophrenia if you are inclined to be schizophrenic. Weed will do all sorts of things, one of which is the moment you start it as a habit is the moment you stop developing emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually, really. Well, Harry's never had any intellect to develop, but he did have a bit of a heart. And he seemed to have some scruples, very selectively, but he had some. disgraceful is all I can say. But then Harry, by his own admission, has used drugs to clear the windshield wipers so that he could see better. So what he was clearing was his conscience and his scruples. They don't exist any longer. So he quite shamelessly sends a note with a wreath, and also, incidentally, the only person who lays a wreath personally is the monarch. Nobody else in the royal family lays a wreath personally. So Harry has not only wiped out years of custom where his status as just another member of the royal family is concerned, but he has usurped the monarch's position. And I have said it for some time that Meghan's attitude was, who does that impertinent 96-year-old or 94-year-old white woman think she is, when I'm a proud, confident woman of colour and I know how to play the colour card, and I'm playing against her and the whole lot of you. And let me tell you something, if you think I'm going to defer to you, who do you think you are just because you're the Queen of England? You need to know your place, and your place is beneath and behind me. She has done it in every way, shape, and form that she could convey the absolute contempt she had, not only for the British monarchy, but for the Queen herself. Remember the one and only first engagement that they did together? She bounces out of the car and she is in front of the Queen. Well, who is that old woman? I mean, I'm here. You've got to pay attention to me. Then the door is opened and she bolts into the car, and the Queen graciously allows her to go in first. I have to tell you, the less said about that couple, really, the better, because she has encouraged Harry to be as crass, as crude, as pushy, as aggressive, and basically as uppity as she is. And if he were not so now crude, crass, and common as to behave like a gutter snipe, he would know how wildly inappropriate it was to send that letter, private letter, that he then ensures is leaked through Amid Scabies to one of Amid Scabies' good friends. It's called a setup. It's another Harry and Meghan setup. And they haven't yet learned that every time they do something like this, they inform more and more people what low down, quite frankly, despicable creatures they are. J. Frost says, people in the UK have already lost the right to free speech. The right to free thought has also fallen. People are being arrested for thinking. Lucy Connelly was the government's way of saying we can do anything we want to anyone. I'm glad Lucy has been released, and I hope she and her family have time together to start to heal. Yes, Lucy Connelly has been released. And to those of you who don't know who Lucy Connelly is, She is the wife of a Conservative councillor who lost her daughter or child. I think it might. Anyway, she lost her child. I think it was a daughter, but I could be wrong, and I'm afraid I am so busy I don't have the time to check such a detail. But she was extremely upset as a result of the Southport assassination of those 3 young girls by the person who did it. And she had good reason to suppose that the person who did it was akin to the person who ended up turning out to have done it. And she posted something inflammatory, and it really was not a recommendation to incite to racial hatred. It was an expression of what she didn't care would happen to people she despised. But the situation is slightly more complex than people seem to think it is. And it goes to the heart of the matter as to how Keir Starmer, who was the Director of Public Prosecutions, so he was one of the senior members of the legal profession, and he has tremendous influence and reach within the judiciary to this day, and how he is misusing not only that influence, but also his knowledge of the law to throttle civil liberties in this country. And he is throttling them very effectively. However, he's not entirely to blame for the fact that Lucy Connelly ended up having the consequences that she did. Let's put it that way. He is largely to blame because he ordered, in public view, he ordered the judiciary to give all of the people involved substantive sentences. What Lucy Connelly's mistake was to actually accept the advice of her clearly incompetent lawyers, which was that she should plead guilty and throw herself on the mercy of the court, a court which, had they been competent, they being her lawyers, they would have known was definitely not going to be pathetic, because Keir Starmer had already instructed in public view the judges to give substantive sentences, and the government had cleared out the prisons of people who had assaulted, people who had committed burglaries, to make space for what Keir Starmer categorized as right-wingers. So anybody who didn't agree with what the government's cock-up of that situation was a right-wing extremist. And of course, Lucy Connelly's husband was a Conservative councillor. That the Conservative Party is now definitely not right-wing. It's very centrist and sometimes quite leftist. I don't think they have done one right-wing thing in the last 10 years. So for him to say that she was a right-wing extremist was ludicrous. But anyway, by pleading guilty, she threw herself on the mercy of the court, and the court had no mercy. It had been instructed by Keir Starmer to issue harsh sentences. When he said substantive, he meant, and everybody who knows the law knows, substantive means throw the book at them and be as harsh as possible, which is exactly what the very obedient judge did. So That is important to understand. Fortunately, she has been released, but she was given no favors. She was actually treated in the harshest way possible, which is a disgrace to the country. And it's a disgrace to British values. There was another case quite recently where, and let's remember, Lucy Connelly pled guilty. There was another case recently, and this gives a reassurance in terms of the British public and the electorate and the average Briton and their basic soundness. There was a Labour politician who incited people to racial hatred and recommended that throats be slit. And he was tried, and the jury let him off on the grounds that it was a figure of speech. They're absolutely right to have let him off on the grounds that it was a figure of speech. Had Lucy Connelly thrown herself at the mercy of a jury rather than a judge, she might well have had justice served, instead of which she had Keir Starmer injustice served. Another issue that is to the forefront at the moment is the tremendous civil liberties issues surrounding in July, the political activist group Palestine Action was banned as a terrorist organization as a result of an act of Parliament. This was debated by Parliament. They had a choice in Parliament to say, excuse me, you do not criminalize people's right to protest, and you certainly do not say that people who support or call for the reversal of the banning of an organization that you have deemed to be a terrorist organization on the grounds that it got into Bryce Norton and disfigured two planes with paint. That a protest group, and a group that is ostensibly adopting a particular position politically, that anybody who supports it can be put in prison for 14 years. Anybody who objects to the fact that it is banned can be put in prison for 14 years. This is draconian. At the moment, there is a judicial review taking place to have this struck down as a bad law. It, in my opinion, and the opinion of all the civil liberties groups, by doing what they did, and let's remember they is practically the whole of the House of Commons. I think there were 20-something against, and the rest of them were for. So it's not only the Labour Party, it's the Tory Party, and it's the Liberal Democrats, and whomever else that was in there who voted for it. They didn't care that they were conflating protest with terrorism. And the two things, I'm afraid, according to the judicial review argument, are entirely different. And I'm going to say, well, because it says if someone invites support for Palestine action or expresses an opinion or belief supportive of that organization, and in so doing is reckless as to whether a person to whom the expression is directed will be encouraged to support it, that warrants a huge penalty in fines and up to 14 years in prison. Sorry. What this government is doing, and what the politicians of all parties who supported that law's passage are doing, is using the legal process to throttle civil liberties and criminalize the ordinary expression that civil liberties would allow a citizen in a civilized and just society to express, whether the government likes the opinion or not. Only dictatorships, only totalitarian states go to the lengths of preventing people from expressing a contrary opinion peacefully. There is a huge difference between protest and the support of any form of terrorism. And this is at the heart of the matter. And I'm going to point out to you the lessons of history in this regard. Systematically throughout the ages, when we had authoritarian, absolute monarchies, this is the sort of thing that happened. If you disagreed with the diktats of the monarch, you could be banished, you could be exiled, you could be imprisoned. Under the French system, the king only needed to send a letter de cachet, and you could end up in the Bastille. That resulted in the French Revolution, partly. That's one of the reasons for the French, one of the justifications for the French Revolution. In fact, when they stormed the Bastille, there was only one aristocrat there as a prisoner, if I remember correctly. But it didn't stop them from slaughtering the governor. So that shows how the law can be misinterpreted and abused, and then the abuses can come back to haunt the authorities to such an extent that the authorities end up suffering. Because let's remember what happened in the French Revolution to the powers that were as opposed to the powers that be. Let's remember that. That's a lesson of the French Revolution. The lesson of the Soviet Union is the exact same lesson that we are being taught now. Lenin used the law to deprive the kulaks of their right to their land and to repatriate people. Stalin took over, and within a decade and a half had completely eroded every single civil liberty that any member of the Soviet Union possessed. Massive, massive pogroms, massive. Oh, I don't want to use the words because this is YouTube. Let's say tens of millions of people suffered. People were sent to gulags or imprisoned or subjected to show trials for no valid reason. But it was all done according to the law. That's right. Stalin used the law the same way that Starmer is using the law to throttle everybody. Where will it end with us? Well, take it from me, nobody in 1919 thought it would end the way it ended. Nobody in 1923 thought it would end the way it ended. Nobody in 1934 thought it would end the way it ended. Nobody in 1936 thought it would end the way it ended. Most of Stalin's own supporters ended up victims of his legal process and lost their lives as a result of it. Let's go a little bit further in to this similar period, although Stalin started before. Hitler comes to power, 1933, uses the law to do everything. How do you think the Nuremberg trials were so easy to prosecute? Because everything was legal, everything was therefore recorded. Every single thing Hitler did to abuse the rights of people and take away their civil liberties and ultimately their lives was legal. Legal! I can't stress it enough. Do you begin to see the reality of when clever politicians use the law to the detriment of the citizens of a country? Now, at this point, it is still just about possible to do as I am doing and criticize the dangers, I should say highlight the dangers that exist and criticize the trend that has been embarked upon. You can still, in this country, do as I am doing, which is issue a warning as to the dangers of going further. Because Keir Starmer is a lawyer, a very capable lawyer. He was the director of public prosecutions. He could have been had he existed in 1792, he might have been Monsieur Robespierre. I say that for what it's worth, although there are more appropriate analogies, but we'll skip those for the moment. But one springs to mind, and to those of you who know your French history, he's got a double-barreled name. So, very ominous. We still have enough civil liberties, but believe me, the noose is tightening. The vice is tightening. And we have to be very careful how we couch things. The fact of the matter is, in any properly civilized country that has respect for civil liberties, you should have the God-given right to articulate support for a banned organization, and as long as you are not a member of that organization, or if you are not asking for support for it, but you are simply stating your objection to the fact that its existence has been banned, you should be allowed to do so. Notice the tremendous amount of public money that is being poured into throttling the alternate views of people in this country who do not accord with Starmer's vision of a compassionate society, a caring society, a society that cares so deeply about those who suffer that it will embrace anybody who claims to be suffering, as long as they agree with the politics of the government. And if they disagree with the politics or the laws and the precepts of the government, that they should be crushed, their liberty taken away. Having taken away their civil liberties, they're going to take away their actual liberty. Several hundred people have been arrested in a demonstration that took place a few days ago in Parliament Square. Are they going to put all of them in prison for 14 years or even 2 or 5 and let out more people who assault women and burgle houses? Let's wait and see. This is not a pretty picture, and it behooves all of us to open up our mouths. And I've got news for you. People are waking up, because the Labour councils themselves are putting their feet down in terms of the housing of illegal immigrants in their quarters. There has been, in the last few days, a tremendous groundswell of opposition to this government's imposed policy of inflicting into peaceful areas all sorts of controversial, shall we say, political decisions. And the Labour councils themselves are now up in arms about it and saying, sorry, we don't want them. So their own party is now rebelling against them. That's a very interesting development. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Thank you so much. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.